Well, today's one of those days where I wish we had walls on the shop so we could get a little heat in here, but it's supposed to be low 60s today and maybe a little bit warmer tomorrow. So I got a project here. Gonna try to get done today and tomorrow. And I know some of you have been waiting in great anticipation. I see you sitting over there, River. I know you're wanting to see this. So without further ado, let's get started. Welcome to A&A. So if you saw the teaser, this is a 2014 Nissan Maxima with a 3.5 engine. A little bit of history on the car. A friend of ours bought this car several weeks ago. Car had about 80,000 miles on it. Ran fine, no problems. Drove it home, no problems. It got to where, and from what I've heard, what I've been told, the car smoked intermittently, not all the time, sometimes. Used a lot of oil sometimes. So they took it to a shop and was told that it needed a new engine. And they gave a few vague reasons why. They called me and said, "Hey, would you be willing to look at it?" And I said, "Absolutely." Because the intermittent smoking and the intermittent oil usage is, is unusual when you have an engine that's kaput. Usually that's something that's constant smoke, oil usage. So the only thing I've done, I'll show you. I did take off the the top engine cover, little cover off the side, and I did take off the air intake hose where the air filter's at. So I haven't really done anything. That top cover has two 10 millimeter bolts you take out and it slides off. The other plastic piece was right over here on the side. So anyway, you just take those two plastic pieces off. The next thing I did, of course this is a V6, so you got 3 cylinders on the front, and you got 3 on the back. So the next thing I did was these, you've got coil on plugs. So these are 10 millimeter bolts. You got 3 on the front, so you take the bolt out, pull the clip, the electrical pigtail clip off of each coil. You pull those out, and these are your spark plug wells. Now each of those boots had some oil on it, which is not real concerning because it wasn't a lot of oil. But the valve covers on these engines have a like an O-ring seal that seals off the spark plug tube from the inside of the head where the oil is moving around. Those seals, get hot, and cold. They dry rot, start to shrink, get hard, and you get a lot of leakage there. We don't have a lot of leakage here, but let me tell you what I'm thinking and what I'm planning. So a few things that could cause the engine to smoke and use oil and it not be an internal engine component issue. The first thing that comes across to my mind that I think about is your positive crankcase ventilation system. You got a PCV valve on these engines, and on this particular one, it is, let's see if I can put my It's back there. It's in the dark. That's sometimes as a culprit. If it's stuck open, then the hose to it, it goes straight into the intake. So if it's stuck open, oil can easily be sucked into the intake and burn through the engine. So in order to get to all that, we're going to end up taking this intake off. In order to take the intake off, you're going to have to take this throttle body off, because this throttle body is cooled by engine coolant, and those are two engine coolant lines going to it right there. So in order to not mess with the coolant and have to drain coolant, you know, if you've seen any of my other videos, don't like getting coolant on my hands. So we're going to take the throttle body loose and try to lay it over. We're going to take some of this other bracketry just loose from the intake, you know, try to get that away so we can get the intake off. Once we get the intake off, the first thing I want to do is get back there and pull the PCV valve off. Easy way to check it is you just shake it. If the little check valve inside is shaking freely back and forth, you're good. If it doesn't shake, or if it doesn't shake well, you definitely want to replace that. We may replace it anyway, but that's the number one thing I want to look at. The number two thing that it could be, the oil as it circulates gets pumped up, you know, into your valve train, which is underneath our valve cover here, and then it drains back into the oil pan through passages that are in the head. If there's something that has clogged these passages up, some gunk, trash, or whatever, and that oil can't flow freely back into the oil pan, then, you know, your valve cover here, it just fills up. Then your valve stems have a seal on the top of them up here in the head. If this thing is full of oil, you know, oil can get sucked past your valve stem seals. Or your valve stem seals could be dry rotted and bad. However, I don't suspect that, because the car had been sitting for several days when we went to pick it up, and at first startup, there was, from the front of the car, there was no smoke. Someone standing at the rear of the car said there was a very, very small amount of smoke that they saw come out. However, standing at the front of the car, we couldn't tell, you know, that anything was smoking. So if the valve stem seals were bad, at first startup, at least you would have a nice puff of smoke, at least for several seconds. So probably going to be taking these valve covers off just to make sure nothing's clogged up. We'll take the intake off. I'm guessing that, you know, if nothing else, this would be a good opportunity to change the spark plugs that are on the back of the engine. But, you know, we're not going to do that until we have determined what's causing the intermediate smoking and the oil usage. Now, to rule out that the engine needs to be replaced, we're going to do compression check and leak down check on all 6 cylinders. It could be a bad head gasket. But, you know, if you look at all the symptoms and you look at what it's doing and you also look at what it's not doing, it really doesn't sound like it's going to be that either. We don't have white smoke. We have the smoke that's coming out has a blue tint, so it definitely sounds like oil being burned. So we're going to inspect, you know, the condition of the engine coolant. We'll see, is there anything getting mixed? I've already looked at the oil. There's no water. You know, there's no water in the oil. The oil actually, you know, looks pretty decent. So we're going to look at all that stuff. My number one first go-to is going to be, let's get this intake off. Then I want to get that PCV valve off. Also, when we take the intake off, we're going to, turn it upside down, inspect the inside of the intake there. If there's a lot of oil, a lot of oil residue, that's another sure sign that it's been sucking oil from the crankcase. So let's get all this stuff off, get the intake off, and let's see what it looks like. Okay, I'm hoping that most of these are going to be the 10 millimeter. It's kind of damp today. There's moisture on everything, so it's not the most ideal situation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just try to take some of this bracketry loose, and we got some little vacuum lines and stuff. We want to make sure we kind of get those out of the way because we're going to be pulling the intake off. Hopefully most of these are going to be the 10 millimeter. Sure would make things easier. You have to take some stuff loose to actually get to the bolt. Oh, it was in there. I know that some of you commented that that you want to see, the wrenching part, the actual, me sitting here doing it. I don't think some of you care to sit and watch all that, but let me know what you like to see. I'll try to accommodate everybody. I believe that a lot of this stuff I think that can stay. This will need to come off right here. Now you guys got to help me remember where all this stuff goes. This is a hard line. We need to take that bolt out. There may be enough of this hose. There's a tear in this little vacuum hose right here towards the end, right where it goes on the connector here. Maybe enough of that hose to where we can cut the tear off and still have enough hose left to reattach. I think we got a winner. What size is that? Can't tell. I don't know if I'm going to be able to loosen these with this. Probably not, but let's see. Definitely would work better with the correct socket, but I don't have any metric of these. I don't have any metric versions of these, so sometimes you just got to work with what you got. Put that on the list for the next trip to Harbor Freight. Don't knock Harbor Freight. Some of their tools are, granted, are not very good, but for the most part, for just a do-it-yourself guy who's not using the tool every single day, most of their stuff's okay. But now if you're going to be using it in a shop where you're everyday use by multiple people, yeah, you need to get some quality stuff. But I would love to have a metric set of these right now. It'll definitely make things a little bit easier, but it's okay. We're gonna make do. Just trying to get these 4 bolts loose, or excuse me, get them removed, so then we can move the throttle body out of the way. Then we're gonna start taking the bolts out of the intake so we can maneuver it out of the way. Then we can see what's going on for reals. I know what all y'all are gonna say. It's like, man, don't you have anything better to do that with? Don't you have some real tools? I'll be glad for somebody to purchase me some. This one's being stubborn. Another little tip for you guys, especially this aluminum stuff. When we go to put this back together, aluminum's pretty soft, and some of this, like this bolt right here, it was pretty difficult to get out. And these little hex head bolts here, whatever you want to call them, Allen head bolts. Man, you can round them things off inside there pretty easy. Luckily that one didn't round off. And then you're really in a pickle. So what we'll do, putting it back together, we'll put a little anti-seize on those, because with the aluminum being soft, and the way the metals react to each other and corrosion and all that kind of thing, let's make it just a little bit easier on the next guy, which hopefully there won't be a next guy. Hopefully this is we're gonna solve the situation, and River will have a good car for a nice long time till he decides to get rid of it, or decides that he wants something else. This over here. All right, come on out of there. Now you can stay if you want. Okay. I'll put you over here so you can kind of see what I did. So this is our throttle body. It was there. Took out the 4 bolts. This 4th one here is also holding a bracket on, so we're just going to kind of move the whole thing, and we're just going to kind of prop it right there. So I'm really curious to get this intake off, and let's see what the inside of that thing looks like. Okay, so forgot to start the camera, so let me tell you what I did. I took these bolts, trying to get the intake loose. I'm not exactly sure what all is going to have to come off, so let's do this, kind of in steps. We don't want to damage anything. We don't want to lose anything. Okay, that That side's coming up, but I need to get this bracket. This bracket right here needs to come loose because I don't want it coming with the intake. So just take your time and go slow. Don't jerk it. Take that little bracket loose. I'm gonna put this little bolt back. A lot of them I put back so I don't lose them, especially the short ones. You know, when they're all the same length, I put them in a pile, and, you know, so I can know what they're for. But let's see. All right, we got a bolt here and a bolt here. That's got to come off. All right, so kind of got to make a decision as to what do we want to come with the intake, or do we just not want anything to come with the intake? A lot of vacuum lines and stuff like that, so I'd really rather just leave them where they're at. Let's try that route, which means I got to take some more bolts off. Luckily, so far, they've all been 10 millimeter. This out of the way. All right, we still got a couple of hoses connected. Funny thing is, the hose, can you see that? Let me just get you off the stand here. My light is on the PCV valve right there. It threads into the valve cover there. And that hose goes up and over to the intake. But if you'll see, the light may be too bright, but that clamp, it has been removed. This hose has been removed from the intake at some point. The clamp is slid down and someone forgot to slide it back up in place. What does that mean? I have no idea. Whatever it takes to. This is a stud, okay. All right. Wow. Let me get your eyes on this. Let me get you back off this stand. I know it's boring sitting up there, but I only got two hands. Turn the intake over. Here's the bottom of the intake. My goodness, at the oil. Look at that. That's a lot of oil. Wow. All I'm doing is running my finger. This one especially has got, I mean, that's a lot of motor oil. So, I mean, I can tell you right now, the oil is being sucked into the intake, which goes into your combustion chamber and is being burned there and then out the tailpipe. Because, dude, that's a lot of motor oil right there. Now, my hope is, oh yeah, All right, so we won't put this back on without getting a new intake gasket. That it would be foolish. It would be foolish to put this back with the old intake gasket. It would be foolish not to change the spark plugs while we've got this off, even though they may have been changed recently. The labor involved in getting all this off, why would you not? I mean, that's a lot of oil, man. But it definitely adds to my suspicion that the PCV system is stuck, open, sucking oil into the intake, and so that makes me feel pretty good. All right, I don't know what size socket that is, so I'm just going to use an adjustable wrench. You laugh if you like. I don't care. This PCV valve is plastic, so you don't want to use all your muscles to get this thing off. I can get a wrench on it. There we go. All right. Well, I see another issue too right now. The hose, well, let me just get it off and I'll show you. How about that? Just calm down. I'm getting there. Let's do the shake test. Oh, guess what? No rattle at all. Here's something I see, another problem. The hose is split in the bottom. This is supposed to rattle. No rattle. I was going to take the spark plugs out. The first two, I didn't even need a ratchet. I could turn them very easily with just my fingers. Not tight at all, very loose as a matter of fact. This one, I had to use the ratchet, but it wasn't tight, not at all. It was just barely snug. Now this third one right here, there was a lot of oil down in the spark plug tube. That means that this seal around this valve cover right here is leaking oil into the spark plug tube. So we may end up having to put new valve covers on this car because you can't just replace that seal that's in there. They're not replaceable. They're basically made into the valve cover. So if that other valve cover, I'm going to take the plugs out, if the other valve cover has a good bit of oil down in any of those plug wells, then we're probably going to be putting valve covers on the car as well. The spark plugs, they haven't been replaced like recently. There we go right there. You can tell it's focus oil. Okay, let me tell y'all something. When you lay your tools somewhere like up here, don't forget where you laid them. I just looked for this for like 30 minutes. Anyway, no, I didn't really. Yep. All right, so let's just loosen these. These are your coils over your plugs. Some cars have coil packs, a bank of coil packs. Some cars have a or an ignition coil. A lot of trucks and cars have coil over plugs, COPs. Imagine that. So each plug, each spark plug, have its own coil. Not much oil. Not much oil. Not much oil. However, by the way, I'm gonna go ahead and put these up here because I want to look for them for an hour later. Just go ahead and put them up there. However, how about we take these plugs out, because the oil residue on the plugs, let's see if they're even tight. All right, that one's snug. That one's snug. I'm not getting any oil on the socket, so that's a good sign. And that one's snug. I bet the ones in the back haven't been out. I'm not getting any oil on my socket, so that's a good sign that these may still be sealing up and I won't have to disturb it. The one on the front I'm definitely going to have to replace because it's leaking. All right, barely was snug. Can y'all see this? This one was barely snug. I mean, just barely. I mean, just barely. Now, I know there's a torque spec on these, but I think it's more than 0.00005 inch-pounds. That was the tightest one of all 6, but it wasn't tight. Go ahead and get them all unscrewed so then we can pull them out and see what they look like. I don't want to replace parts I don't have to. If there's no oil, like fresh oil around the bottom of these plugs, I'm not going to remove this valve cover gasket. If it's not leaking, the front one is definitely leaking in a couple of them, so we will replace it. And it'll give us a chance to inspect what's underneath the valve cover. If it's clean on the front, it's more than likely not clogged on the back. However, if it's clogged on the front, we will be taking the back one off. All right. Get your handy magnet. There is no fresh oil around the bottom of that. That's good. I don't want to replace parts that I don't have to. Trying to save the guy as much money as I can. Okay, there's no fresh oil around that one. There's no fresh oil around that one. That means that that valve cover is still sealing around the spark plug tubes. All right, so we're going to do a compression test on these, on each of the 6 cylinders. I got my little tester, and you're going to have to watch for me because, well, you know, I'm just a one-man show here. So what we want is consistent pressure on all 6 cylinders. I want you to watch the gauge. Now, push button start car, I'm hoping that, you know, when it doesn't start, hopefully after 3 or 4 seconds, it'll stop trying to start, because all we need, you know, is about 4 or 5 revolutions out of the engine to top out on our pressure. I've never done this on a push button start car before. You usually have a key, you know, you crank it over a few times, let go, So anyway, I'm gonna go sit in the car. I'm gonna push the button. You guys keep an eye on this gauge right here. We'll do each of the 6 cylinders. We want the pressures in all of them to be somewhat close. Let's say if this first cylinder ends up being 90, well, 80 to 100 on the next one, that's close enough. You watch that gauge. All right, let's see what you got. Whew, you got 180. All right. I'm sorry, is that 180? Yep, that's 180. Okay, we're going to release that pressure. We're going to go ahead and get it out of this cylinder. Then we're going to go ahead and move it to cylinder number 2. So we're looking for 180, 170, 190, heck, 160. Anything close will be fine. You're not going to be that exact. So, all right, you know what you got to do. Just watch. All right, what'd you get? You got 120. That's not too snazzy. Let's try that again. Make sure we got it tight. Need to get closer to 180. Well, we got 135, 140. So, it is what it is. What we don't want is to get something like a 30 or 40 or 50. Then we know we've got a bad cylinder. So let's just keep going like we're going. I mean, the engine, like I say, does have 80,000 miles. We don't know how they maintained it before we got it. So, all right, let's try number 3. Back to 180. So we have one here that's suspect to being weak. It's okay, you can have a weak cylinder. Even brand new cars use oil between oil changes, especially these late model cars. All right, I've got it reset to 0, so let's try cylinder number 4. Well, I don't know what number it is. I'm just saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't know how Nissan actually numbers their cylinders. Cylinder number 4 for us. What we got? All right, we got another one that's a little on the weak side. Looks like just a little over 120. So let's try it one more time. Make sure we got that tight. So 120, 180, 180, 120, 120. I don't know. I would think 120 would be our lowest. If we see something lower than that, then we probably should be a little worried about that. But let's try this one again, see if we can get just a little bit better. All right, we did do better. 150, pressure released, back to 0. All right, let's see. Yep, we got 180 on that one. All right, we've got one that's lower than 120. I don't like that, but it's possible that I didn't have it tight enough. So, make sure we got it tight. Let's try it again. We're looking for at least 120. All right, we have 121 or 2. It's the best we're gonna do. So, does it have a couple of weak cylinders? Well, maybe. Is he gonna burn a little oil between oil changes? Probably. Is it gonna be major, like engine rebuild area? No, I don't think so at all. Could do a leak down test, but I don't really see where that's going to give us a whole lot more information. We may have a couple of weak cylinders. That's about it. So another thing we can do is, and I've done this in some of my older cars that have a lot of miles, is the Lucas oil treatment is some good stuff. substitute a quart of your oil with a quart of Lucas oil treatment, and improves the viscosity. Um, helps those rings to seal tight against the cracks and stuff. Or I'm sorry, not the cracks, but the wear on those cylinder walls. So we can go ahead and put these plugs in there. I don't know what the gap on these plugs are. I'm just looking to make sure that they haven't been jostled around to the point to where the gap is closed. Come with these little protective tubes, that's supposed to keep that from happening. So as long as there's a gap on there, I'm gonna call it good. Let's see how's the best gonna be to do this. I'm going to drop it gently. And I'm going to follow that up with doing my best not to cross thread the plug. If you start, spinning your plug in, it's giving you some resistance. I know your first inclination is probably just to put the ratchet on it and crank her on down. Don't do that. Just go easy. She should thread in there all the way really easy, just like that one did all the way. All right, now it's tighter now than the one I took out. Like right now, that's a lot tighter than the one I took out. I mean, that's how bad loose they were. So let's just snug these up. I don't know what the torque spec is, but that's plenty. All right, that's it. We got the 6 plugs in. So while we wait on the valve cover to come in, we can go ahead and put some brake pads on. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and do some brake pads on the front of this car. And before you jack it up, you need to break your wheel fasteners. You need to break them loose. And so we got the wheel jacked off the ground. One of the things the customer told me was that seems to be some wobble when it gets up to interstate speeds and higher. That there seems to be a wobble in the front end. Typically that would be a wheel out of balance. I believe he said once he got up to about 80. So if it's not doing any of that below 80, I'm thinking it's probably fine. What the doctor said, hey, if it does that at 80, just don't go 80. So tire off the ground, the wheel fasteners are broke loose. Let's just see if we can't get some play by moving the wheel side to side and then top to bottom, and see if there's any slack in any of the components. Then we'll go ahead and remove the wheel, replace the brake pads, unless something else demands our attention. No play from side to side. None from top to bottom. So far that's okay. So let's go ahead and get this tire off. good way to check belt. See a crack in that belt. Rack and pinion boots look good. Axle boot looks good. Rack and pinion boot is fine. Sway bar inlink. Boots are still there, look good. Can't really see the sway bar bushings from here, but everything looks pretty good. I mean, the car's got 80,000 miles on it. That belt does have some cracking, so this will be a prime opportunity to put a belt on it. So next thing is going to be is to peel this caliper back, and these pads are about shot. The rotor really needs to be resurfaced, but you know, we're kind of on a budget here, so there's no really thick ridge here on the edge there, you know, where the rotor has just been wore completely out. So I'm going to put pads on and not do anything about the rotor. It's just not in our budget right now, but the pads definitely. So what I'll do is we'll take this bolt out, and really what we want to do is just kind of peel this caliper back this way. We're going to make sure that it slides on the pins, make sure there's no corrosion in there. The pad should be evenly worn, front and outside and inside pad should be evenly worn. If not, the pins aren't sliding freely, so if they're not, we'll clean that, lubricate them up. So I believe that's a 9/16, so I'm not positive, but well, it'll be metric. So let me get the metric stuff out and let's get that off. Okay, there's not enough slack in the old brake line unless I get this clip off. You know what? I don't really want to do that. So I was just going to peel this back and you can just do the pads, but let's just take it all the way off because I don't want to damage that line. Okay. Here's kind of what you get into, in cars that you don't really know anything about. I don't know if you can see that. You see the tear in the boot around the brake caliper piston. This is the piston. This is the dust boot around it. Got a tear right there. It's not good. They do make little rebuild kits for these, but I've never had luck with them. I've always just replaced the caliper. So right now, it doesn't appear to be leaking. So we don't have it in the budget for new brake calipers. We're just going to have to reuse these. I'm going to get my compressor to push this piston back in. As long as it goes in smooth, we're good. If it doesn't go back in and binds up, we're going to have to replace this caliper. So these pads are pretty simple to do. Get off and on, just slide. So let's look at the pads. They're wore pretty evenly, but they're about wore out. So we'll be replacing those. Matter of fact, let me get one of these. All right, so what we're doing now is we're going to push this caliper piston back inside the caliper. Hopefully it goes smooth. If not, well, we're just hoping it's going to go smooth. It's going. Now when you do this, I've got my eye on the brake master cylinder up under there, you know, under the hood up there on the firewall. As you're pushing this piston back in the caliper, you're pushing brake fluid back into the system that's been behind this piston. You push your brakes, it's hydraulic. The brake fluid goes in behind this piston, pushes the piston out, which then pushes these pads together. So when we push the piston back in the caliper, keep your eye on that master cylinder, or either put a little cup under it or something in case it does overflow. You know, you check your brake fluid occasionally and you top it off when it starts to get low. Well, when you do your brakes, push all that fluid back in the system, then you may have an overflow situation. So far, so good. I don't see anything. So we're good. And the piston went back in there, so we're good for now on this one. We don't know what the other three hold for us, but the pads were wore evenly. That's great. Piston went back in there pretty easily. That's great. These can you see what I'm doing? These all these little clips. You get new ones with your new brake pads, so do not reuse these things. All right. The piston, the little slides are sliding really well. That's awesome. If they don't, you've got to get them out, clean them, and lube them. These are sliding good. The little boots are still on there. Awesome. Need a tiny screwdriver so we can make some minute adjustments. I'm not gonna bore y'all with, you know, showing you both sides of doing these brakes, or even front and back, but I mean, if you want me to, I will. What I'm doing right now is, once you snap this piece of hardware in here, you know, you don't want to get it, you don't want it to touch the brake rotor, and it's easy to do. So I had mine a little too close to the front, so all I did was I got my handy screwdriver and bumped it back out. So that's looking good. The brake pads, they're, you know, it's pretty intuitive. They're only going to go in there one way. And the front ones, you know, these front ones are all identical, so it's not like you're going to get them mixed up. But I will tell you one thing, they do stink. I've never known brake pads to stink like this. Anyway, I'm sure there's something like, you know, toxic on these brake pads that you're not supposed to touch with your bare hands. I don't know, I'm just guessing. forgot to put my top clip in. See, you guys are here to help me, and you're just sitting there. Let's get this one snapped in. And it snaps on pretty easy. You just want to make sure you're not touching the caliper. I'm sorry, the rotor. And I'm not. Now, back to square one. If you notice the curvature of the pad, of course the pad needs to be facing the rotor, and then you just match the curvature, and then you snap it into the grooves of your little clip you just put in there. This is why I say, you know, you can do it yourself. Everybody can do their own brake jobs. You can do your own automotive work. Or you can just bring it to me. All right, so now let's work our, oops, that way. Brake caliper back on. You know, I did forget to put the little anti-rattle clips. And there's no, you know, there's no mystery about these. All these are for is to keep some type of tension on these pads. So let me get you off the stand and show you what I did. So the kit comes with your brake pad, set of brake pads. Comes with these little anti-rattle clips, and you can, if you pay attention when you remove your old ones, you can see them. But I'll get you in here and show you. So on the edge of the brake pad, there's a little hole. I'll show you on this one right here. You see that little hole on each end? Right here and then down there. So each pad has that. So all you do is you take one of these, stick one into that hole, stick one into that hole. And then the other holes, you put another one. And so they're applying very slight tension to the pads, just enough so that, you know, when you let off the brake, you're driving down the road, you don't get a rattle from your pads. It's all it is. It's no big deal. It's not rocket science. So, all right, back on the stand you go. All right, so let's get our caliper back on now. Once you do a couple of these, you'll see all the little nuances. Like there's a little groove in this sleeve right here that fits a certain way onto the caliper that keeps this from spinning as you're tightening this little bolt. So when something don't fit, it's not going in easily, just stop and look at what's going on, because it should go in easily. And basically now all I gotta do is tighten these two bolts, and the passenger side front brake pads will be completed. We've got brake pads on all four wheels, and so now we're gonna put the belt on, because there is a few cracks in this belt. It's not major, but you know, we're right here at it. And so if you notice, there's a couple things missing. You usually have you know, splash guards or wheel well liner, whatever you want to call it. There's at least one piece that goes over here, and at least one piece that, you know, covers this part up. Those are missing, so that's going to have something to do with, you know, the flopping sound he hears, I would imagine. But you know, unless you're doing a lot of gravel road driving, or, you know, running through a place where you're going to maybe pick up a limb or rocks that might sling in here and, you know, throw your belt off, it's probably going to be fine. So the belt tensioner is this right here, and the size of that bolt head is 13 millimeter. So you can't really do this from up top, because, you know, it's all down here low. And I'll get you off the stand and show you what we see from up top. You can't see anything from up top. So, you know, if you've got some really skinny hands, yeah, maybe. But it's not my case. So the easiest thing for me to do is going to be to do it from down here below. So the first thing we're going to do, see if I can get y'all to where you can see, plus you'll be out of my way. I've just got a really long extension, 3/8 extension, on my ratchet here. And so what you do is, we're going to, you know, get the tension off the belt by turning clockwise. So what I'm going to try to do is do this with one hand. Once you got tension off the belt, just, you know, slip it off of something, and then you can release your tensioner back. Of course, then, you know, then the belt catches on stuff and you can't get your socket back off. So let's try that again. With the tension, let's see if we can't go ahead and get it off the crankshaft. There we go. Now you've got plenty of room. Then you can release that tensioner back. Okay. So, you know, getting belts off is usually not very difficult. Usually something comes off pretty easy. It's the getting it back on that can be a little challenging sometimes, but it's probably come on. You can come on off. And hung up on one pulley. There we go. Okay. What are you hung on now? There you go. Get off. Come on over there. All right, so let's take a look at this belt here. See if I can. So it's actually the belt's in pretty good shape. I did see some cracks in it. Okay, there's a small crack right there. Can you see that? So I'm just seeing small minor cracks. Okay, here's a few. There's one here, here, one here on the edge. So while it's not major cracks, you know, there's a lot of smaller cracks. So, I mean, if this was my car and I was doing this work, it's a $23 belt. You know, imagine if you don't change it, it breaks on you going down the interstate. You You don't know who to call. Everybody else is hours away. You're gonna have to get somebody to help do something. It's probably gonna cost you more than $23. So we've got the new belt. I'm gonna have to get you guys out of the way so I can get my hands in there and get it, routed back. But I'll get it on there. But before we put it back on the tensioner, I'll get you back in here so you can see how that goes. Okay, well, I lied to you. You really need 2 people for this. If, you're like me and you're just not that intelligent, because I noticed, and you can see part of it. You see this little ear on your tensioner? It's got a hole in it. Well, once you tighten or turn this tensioner to get the belt off, there's another ear right above it with a hole in it. You can just slide, say, a 1/4 inch extension, something about that size, in them holes, and that will lock your tensioner open. I didn't realize that, of course, till I was putting the new belt on, or else I could have showed you everything. And I'm not going to take it off just to show you everything, but move this. You can see that ear right here with the hole in it. So when you turn the tensioner, this ear moves up and lines up with another ear that has a hole in it. Take like a 1/4 inch extension, slide through both those holes, and that'll lock your tensioner in place. Then you won't have to wrestle with it like I did. But if you're determined to do it like me, the hard way, like everything else in my life, wrap the belt around everything but your crankshaft. Tensioner, idler pulley, air conditioner, wrap it around everything, and your belt will be right here. Hold tension on it with one hand while you put your long extension and your ratchet on your tensioner, and using your left knee and whatever other help you can get from house pets and whatever, turn the tensioner, slide the belt on the crankshaft. I would suggest you do it the smart way, which is not the way I did it, and just insert something through the holes in your tensioner, hold that open. All right, the new belt's on. We got our parts in. Got a new valve cover and our PCV valve and all that stuff. What we was really waiting on was the valve cover. That's what was delaying us. So I've started taking the bolts out of the old valve cover. This wire loom that goes around there, it's going to be, first of all, the black plastic loom that's over the harness it crumbles in your hand. So once we kind of get this ready to take off, we're going to have to get our air hose and blow all that mess away from everything, because it's just it's pretty brittle. So there's a electrical box right here. This harness comes around. Of course, you got wires coming off all the way down, and then there's this electrical box right here. There is a bolt that we need to get to. It's directly under that. Naturally. So what I did was I'm gonna have to take the rest of the air intake. I'm gonna have to take the rest of this off. Maybe have to take the battery out. I'm not sure, but I got to get this off to see. It's held in place. It's bolted down somewhere because I can't, scooch it out of the way to get to the bolt. So we'll take this off. The air box, or the where the air filter goes, there's one bolt that holds it in, so I've got it out. This, of course, pulls into the fresh, cool air. It's got 3 bolts, one here, one in the middle, one on the other end. All these have been 10 millimeter so far, so that does make things a little bit easier. I'm gonna put you on the stand here, since I only got 2 hands, and so I've got my box of bolts going here. So let's go ahead and take this off so we can see what's going on under there. Here's the box in question, and what is holding it? I may need to take this loose as well because, well, I don't know, maybe not. I got to try to figure out how to like work the valve cover out without just removing, you know, everything. But this has got to, maybe it's not bolted down. Anyway, we'll have to get something to gingerly pry that over to the side there. I don't see where it's bolted in. Let's just see if we're going to be able to. There it is, well, the one I need to get to. Yep. Everything so far has been a 10 millimeter, which, you know, makes things easy. Wow, pretty tight. I believe we can. Come on. I need a second hand on this, but or a third hand, but sometimes you got to get a little creative when you're just a one-man show. Just take a screwdriver underneath the edge of it. All you gotta do is break that seal. Oof. Okay, we got the valve cover off. Had to take out a little bit more than I wanted to. I'm gonna tell you, this is not encouraging. I'll show you why. And you see all the gunk. That's not a clean engine. The sludge that has built up, that's from not changing the oil frequently enough. Geez Louise. Yeah, this is bad. So plan is going to be, we're going to replace, of course we got the new valve cover for the front. I didn't order one for the back. I should have, because now it has to come off. And let me show you why I really don't want to replace the original valve covers. I mean, that's bad. That's bad. So wouldn't be surprised if they're all clogged up. That's yes, that is, it's not good to say the least. So Well, I mean, we can't, we can't rebuild the engine, but what we can do is we can try to scoop out some of the gunk, make sure that the passages letting the oil go back down into the oil pan, we can make sure that those are not clogged up. Now, taking the valve cover off, a few of those little tidbits did drop in here, but after seeing this, it's that's the least of our worries. That's yeah, that's some oh my goodness. I keep saying oh my goodness because I've never seen one quite this bad. Back in the 80s, you used to see heads that looked this bad from them using, Quaker State oil. That's when it came out about the Quaker State. There was, what is that? That is one solid piece of gunk. Okay, so what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to try and pick out as much of this gunk as I can before I install the new valve cover. In the meantime, I got to order a valve cover for the back side of the engine, or the right side. This would be called the left, that's the right. Go figure. I think that's really the front of the engine, but Nissan says, nope, this is the left, this is the right. So I got to order a new valve cover for that one, because there is no telling what I'm going to find when I take that one off. My original plan was, if this one was fairly clean, like you typically see in a normal engine with routine maintenance, I wasn't going to go into that one, because if one side's clean, the other side's not going to be dirty, because with routine maintenance they're going to be the same. All right, well, I guess I'd better get to cleaning, and it's a good thing we took that valve cover off. If it hadn't been leaking around the plug well, I probably would not have even taken it off. But so it's a good thing, we discovered this. We'll clean this out best we can, make sure the passages are clear for the oil to get back down to the oil pan. In the meantime, I'll order one for the right or the rear, and then we'll go from there. All right, guys, appreciate it. Okay, I'm gonna let that be the end of part one. I had hoped that this would just be a one-part video of the diagnosing, installing the new parts, test driving, and all that kind of good stuff. It's turned into a little bit more than we had anticipated once I got that valve cover off. There's a lot of cleaning to be done underneath that. The back one, or the right one, when I get that valve cover off, it's on the back side of the engine. It's going to be an awful lot harder to try to get in there to see what's going on and to do any effective cleaning. So we're going to do a part two, be the the valve cover situation continued, and then reinstallation of everything in the test drive. The problem with the oil consumption was, I believe, very strongly a bad PCV valve. However, I think that condition was worsened by what I saw underneath the front valve cover with the sludge. The PCV system, you have to have basically a baffle on the inside or the underside of that valve cover. So when your air is flowing up through the PCV valve, you're not able to suck oil through there because there's a baffle. So it can, you know, the oil and whatever moisture may be in there hits the baffle, and all the PCV valve is able to do is suck the air and the gases. So if there's a lot of sludge buildup, you know, that's affecting the baffle and how that works with the PCV valve, or if those passageways back into the oil pan from the head are clogged with gunk, which I can see they very likely could be, and the valve cover fills with oil, then the baffle is ineffective because the bottom of the PCV valve is resting in oil. So I got a lot of cleaning to do. Part two will be getting the rear valve cover off, installing the new valve covers, buttoning things back up. But it's obvious that this car did not have good maintenance. The sludge and all of that, that's from oil not being changed on a regular basis, possibly the wrong oil being used. That's the end of part one, so stay tuned for part two. The saga continues. Have a good day, and please remember, be kind to one another.